Welcome to the National Championship Player Prop Show. We've whittled the field down from 68 to just two, but don't worry, we're keeping our esteemed panel of prop specialists at four here. I'm Mike Calabrese. I'm joined by three prop legends, Sean Koerner, Nick Giffen, and Erik Beimfohr. Before we get into the action, we do know it's a little bit tricky sometimes to find these player props, so we're going to make it as easy as possible for you. If you're watching along on the YouTube show, just go to the YouTube chat. That'll allow you to immediately add these picks to your bet slips and get them onto your card as fast as possible. All right, Sean, let me hit you up because you already have a winner in the prop market today. You were able to hit Casey Mize on a strikeouts over, cruise past that number, sweat free. So you're feeling the mojo here coming in. And I assume that you're just going to go with an over, make it fun. It's the last game of the year. Why would you possibly give us a really gross under? You wouldn't do that to us on the last show.
No, no, absolutely not. But I'm feeling good after that, early cash of the day. So why not? I'm gonna do something maybe a little crazy, maybe a little stupid, but it's definitely bold. I'm actually gonna take Walter Clayton Jr. under
Oh,
19 and a
I'm
half
sorry.
points.
You broke up there for a second. You said Walter Clayton over 35 points at
Uh,
the one,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
An alt over, parlay that, let's keep it rolling. No, I'm actually going with the under, believe it or not. Well, gross unders are kind of my thing. I thought I was going to be the first person to bet his under for the game, but it sounds like Erik already beat me to the punch. So I have some solid company on this, gruesome under, as you called it. Like, he's been incredible. He's a guy I don't want to fade. He's coming out back-to-back 30 plus point games. But I wouldn't really consider this a fade on him as a player, but more of a bet on the country's best defense in the Houston Cougars. So this is a bet on their defense to potentially find a way to slow him down. So not only could they find a way to slow him down, but they play at one of the slowest paces in the country. So Florida's going to have fewer possessions than normal here. So that's just less chances for Clayton Jr. to score. Plus, over this last 17 game stretch, he's averaged 19.8 points. But Florida has averaged 88 points a game over that stretch, and their team total tonight is right around 70, which I pretty much agree with. So that's 18 points lower than his last 17 game stretch when he was kind of averaging this, point total. So that's going to be a hit on him specifically. But I ran my Sims and I'm projecting him closer, 17 and a half points. So about a 59% chance he stays under 19 and a half here. So I'm going to go with the bold play here with Clayton Jr. under 19 and a half points.
I'm interested. You brought up your Sims. If Houston does do what they usually do on the defensive end, they're monstering those ball screens, they're doubling, potentially trying to get the ball out of Clayton Jr.'s hands. Do you see his assists ticking up? And is that something that perhaps our audience could look for if they're going for a pro Clayton Jr. play?
Yeah, definitely. I think that could be something that happens if they double him. Maybe he'll be more of a distributor. Houston does, allow a lot of threes, all things considered, and high assist rate. So yeah, that would be a path for him to still be part of the scoring without actually scoring points. So that could be something that, Florida, buys into. But yeah, like we were showing some slight value on the over on his assists, I believe, and the under on points. So that would totally line up with our projections.
Dr. Nick, let's get you involved here. Certainly, you're going to come with something fun we can all root for. Ball goes through the basket, right?
Well, maybe for the next pick, but for this one, I got to go to maybe an even grosser under. I know Sean's is gross simply because it's the star player there, Walter Clayton Jr. But I'm gonna go to his teammate Reuben Chinu under 5.5 points at -125. Look, he's averaging 6.1 points in SEC tournament and NCAA tournament play, but that's with Florida scoring 88.4 points in those games. So he's only scoring 6.9% of Florida's points. And at their implied team total of around 70 points, that would equate to just 4.8 points if he was scoring that 6.9% number. And that's without making any adjustments. And obviously, we need to make some adjustments here. Chinelu's had 2 games where he's played over 20 minutes in these tournaments. And both of them came with special circumstances. One when, of course, Condon got injured, and the other, the most recent game, Condon fouled out and he got in foul trouble super early. But I don't think Alex Condon is going to get into foul trouble here. Houston 327th in the nation in terms of getting to the line, and especially their bigs don't really get to the line a lot, especially Joseph Tugler. And Houston, of course, they also play at a slow pace. That's part of why this total is, team total is down to 70 for Florida here. And I think there's some shooting regression in store for Chinyelu. He's been hitting about 65% of his shots from inside. He only shoots from inside. And, his career average is 60%. So there could be a little bit of regression there since he's been hitting 65% in these tournaments. And of course, against Houston, one of the best 2-point defenses in the nation with Tugler there, Jojo Tugler. It's going to be very tough, I think, for Chinyelu to get a lot of looks and have some successful looks here. So, Houston definitely forces teams to shoot outside more because of their great interior defense. So we're projecting closer to 4.5 in maybe a generous 17 and a half minutes of play, which would give them about a 66% chance of staying under 5.5.
I like the fundamentals of that bet. You laid it out perfectly. But for the love of God, Erik, do you have an over? So something good to happen that we can root for in this game?
I can bring a little bit more fun to the table here. With it is a points over. We're keeping it simple. Jawan Roberts over 11.5 points, minus 130. And these have all been pretty clear cut. I think Houston, you outlined it, Mike, is one of those teams that obviously they're the best defense in the country, but they're very specific in how they do things on both ends of the floor. And in this matchup in particular, I think Jawan is probably the clearest avenue they have to points. Obviously, Uzan and Cryer and those guys are going to take shots. They're going to make shots, but Florida does not double the post. They have a bunch of bigs, as you mentioned, Chinelu and Condon and Hauk and all these guys. They're going to play one-on-one with Roberts in the post, and that's kind of outside of the guards going isolation, the way that Houston really likes to play offense. The primary post bigs against Florida in this tournament have seen elevated volume and have had a ton of success. Broom was absolutely dominating early with one arm and maybe one leg in that game. A pretty good second half there from Florida, but JT Toppin, huge volume. Derek Queen, Julian Reese, the UConn bigs, especially Samson Johnson, is not a scorer, and he scored in double digits against this Florida team all the way back to the first round against Norfolk State, who covered against Florida, by the way. Their big man, Chris Fields, scored 14 points against this Florida front line. They just kind of allow a little more volume and try to take away outside shooting, which I think just funnels everything to Jawan Roberts. We saw a similar setup against Gonzaga, who's just going to let Graham Ike and Braden Huff and those guys guard in the post. And Jawan Roberts had a 30% usage rate in that game, scored 18 points. He even went over this number, albeit on maybe an interesting final foul call late last game in the Final Four, but he did go over this number against Duke with their elite defense and Flag and Malawach and those guys. So I think Roberts is the clear-cut way for Houston to score some points and the clear-cut way for us to get on track with some more fun bets as opposed to these gross unders we're on here.
I absolutely agree with that play. I'm going to piggyback onto it for my second prop I'm bringing to the table. To get things started, though, Milos Uzan, 20 or more points in this game. It bubbled up close to 7-1. It's down to plus 580 in the market. I like it down to 11-2. And the reason is this team and their overall ceiling was elevated once he basically progressed and matured as a player on the offensive end about halfway through this season. And since then, he has shown up in big games time and time again. You saw it in the Big 12 title game against Arizona, goes for 20 plus with 6 triples against Purdue, including the game winner. And in terms of a pure value play, I don't see a player on Houston that has more upside that could be needed more in this game than Uzan. He also always has the potential, as I mentioned, those 6 threes against Purdue. He can unload the clip from three-point range. He has 7 games this season with 6 or more attempts from long range. The Gators allow 23 triple attempts per game, which is about 185th in the entire country. And the recency bias, just shake it off. Against Duke, not only did he get into foul trouble, but in terms of the flow and where the basketball was going in the second half, it was going to Cryer, and rightfully so. But this is a brand new game, start fresh. I think there's a good chance for him to go off in this game. And also, we talk about pace, and I like Houston in the game, and I think that they will impose their will and could potentially win a rock fight. But if it goes the other way and Florida is able to speed them up, and this game is played in the 70s or low 80s, and Houston has been coaxed into a game or two like that in the past few seasons under Sampson, all of a sudden, a huge scoring night becomes much more plausible for a player like Uzan than it is currently. All right, let's turn on to our second prop bets of the night. I'm just making sure, Dr. Nick, you're going to go first, but Sean, you have nothing to bring to the table. You're just going to leave us with that under on Walter Clayton Jr.
Yeah, the Clayton fade was all I got for today. That took a lot out of me. But I'll definitely have some like more strikeout props and stuff like that. But I'm tapped out after that Clayton under. Trust me.
All right, Nick, we ate our vegetables with your under 5.5 points on a member of the Florida front court. Now you're going to get us to dessert here at a 16-1 prop bet.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's now 14-1, and it's not a player prop, but I got to stay on Dr. Nick Brand here and go with overtime, 14-1. So that gives us something to root for, right? The neutrals like me who have nothing in it, right? I had Auburn versus Duke in the championship game. So my bracket is already done. So I'm a neutral. I got nothing here. I just want some overtime. I have no other reasons than it's a 1 point spread, right? Like, let's have some fun. Let's bet overtime. It's no other analysis other than that.
Erik, when I think about this game, I think first about Sampson in his room with his coaches, just rewinding the tape, play, every single Walter Clayton Jr. three-pointer, Steph Curry-like move. And I know he's just telling his assistants, we can't let this guy kill us. We have to do whatever we can do to get the ball out of his hands. And as I mentioned earlier, that's a part of their game plan, doubling, forcing those cross-court passes where they get steals, but they gamble. And when they do that and you properly swing and rotate the basketball, you can get some open threes. You think there's one player in particular on the Gators who could be in line for a big night from downtown?
Yep, I think the price is just a tick off on Will Richard. We're going with 3+ 3 pointers at plus 260. Sean kind of hinted on it before. You just hinted on it there. Houston, the kind of breakdown of Houston's defensive scheme is probably even a little bit of a broken record at this point. We've been talking about it, but it is so specific and it highlights certain things that teams not only end up doing just because it's the easiest attempt, but Houston specifically forces you into doing that. They took Braden Smith completely out of that game. They kind of took everybody on Duke out of that game the other night. And I wholeheartedly agree with you that that's exactly what Kelvin Sampson and co are going to do. They're going to, anytime, even dribble handoffs, right? It's not just ball screens, dribble handoffs to Walter Clayton because Florida doesn't run a ton of pick and roll, but they're going to blitz those. They're going to do everything to keep Walter Clayton uncomfortable and not getting his open 3 pointers. And he's pretty much always open. And so he's going to get a ton of pressure, which leads to those backside 3 pointers, right? We didn't quite get home with Sion James and some of the Duke guys, but the opportunity was definitely there. And Will Richard and Elijah Martin as well, but I think the number's a little better for Will Richard is a high volume 3-point shooter. He's shooting 35% on the year with 216 total attempts. So you average that out. That's about 5.5, little over 5.5 attempts per game. And this is a really high volume spot for him. So he could get white hot. He has shown it several times this season. High volume, double digit 3-point attempts in multiple games this year. We actually saw in a very similar matchup with Texas A&M, who did that to Walter Clayton. They would not let Walter Clayton beat him, blitz the pick and roll, and Will Richard led the game in scoring with 25 points and went 6 for 9 from 3. So I think we have a very similar type game here that we saw in the Texas A&M game, and Houston is probably even more aggressive in taking the ball out of Walter Clayton's hands. So I love some Will Richard 3-pointers.
Erik, I appreciate everything you laid out with Jawan Roberts and the potential for him to go over his player prop on points tonight. For that reason, I'm going to piggyback on it. Let's go 7-1 on him getting a double-double because I do think he's going to get countless opportunities in the post. And when it comes to offensive rebounding, this is what is interesting when playing Florida. Florida gets a bunch of credit for what they do on the offensive glass themselves, but on the defensive glass, they're 137th in terms of defensive rebounding percentage. So this is a player who just up against Duke in the very last game, Roberts was able to come away with 4 offensive rebounds. That Duke length in the front court didn't bother him as much as some pundits assumed it would. So I think there's an opportunity for him to get to double digits, and this would be the 4th time in the last 8 games. So you go back to the Big 12 tournament, he's been playing the highest profile games and still doing damage on the glass. And 7-1, that's just too much value for me to pass up. So I see Jawan Roberts going, let's call it 12-12 points and rebounds in a spot like this, and this would be a great thing to cash before the season is officially over. All right, speaking of it being over, this is the last game. We got to get a full prediction from everybody. Score, winner. I'll start with you, Sean.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Florida winning 70-68 on a Clayton Jr. game-winning 3 at the buzzer to end with exactly 18 points, cash the under 19.5. My worst bracket ever ends up being 60th percentile because I had Florida winning it all. So yeah, I'm going to go with that.
And just so you know, Sean, absolute buzzer beater was 0.0 on the clock. Walter Clayton hitting the shot. That pays 60 to 1 out there in the market. So if you feel that much conviction, you may as well toss that on there. Nick, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I just edited my final score. But here's another thing about this overtime. Remember the last time we had all 4 1 seeds in the Final Four, 2008? What happened in that game? It went to overtime in the championship game. Kansas 75-68 over Memphis. So I'm going Houston 75-68 in overtime.
Erik, any deep historical cuts to fuel your pick here?
No, I'm not quite bringing the heat that those two guys are with the final score here. My general sentiment is what you said before. I kind of think Houston, I'm picking Houston 64-62, which would clearly dictate that Houston is having it their way here. I can't think of a moment for Kelvin Sampson and all of these, tough dudes on Houston to come impose their will. In the national championship game, I think they slow it down. It's a total rock fight, but Houston pulls away in the end, and maybe not on a Walter Clayton three-pointer. I don't want to sweat that under with him at the end, but 64-62 Houston.
I'm going to go 67-66 Houston, and just to paint a picture, I think they double-team Clayton on the final possession. He's frustrated with it all night, still gets up a fadeaway 3 at the buzzer, rattles out, and Houston cuts down the Nets in their home state as a national champion. That'll do it for us. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined as always by Sean Koerner, Dr. Nick, and Erik Beimfohr. Thank you so much for riding along with us. A reminder, in the chat, you can go ahead and hit those quick slips to get those bets populated in your sports book of choice. So if you want to go ahead and tail us on those bets, we made it as easy as possible for you. Thank you so much for listening and follow along the entire season. Everyone here at Action Network, we know you as the fans and as audience members really make it for us. So please join us next year as we get into college hoops again at the beginning of the season. Thanks again, and best of luck on your bets.